In this quick tutorial, I want to give you a simple tool built right into Premiere Pro that will quickly and easily enhance the overall sound quality of dialogue in your films and videos. Over this past weekend, I had the pleasure of attending the screening of movie trailers presented by recent film school graduates. The overall work was brilliant and exciting, but in some cases the dialogue tracks were uneven, with low, soft dialogue lines being difficult to hear clearly, and louder dialogue lines becoming overbearing. The solution to these problems is dynamic range compression, or simply referred to as compression. Compression reduces the volume of loud sounds and amplifies quiet sounds by narrowing or compressing an audio signal's dynamic range. Compression is an effect that can be added to an individual clip, but what we want to do in this case is we want to add it to our dialogue track. Hopefully in your editing, you keep all of your dialogue isolated to one or two tracks. So we go to Window in Premiere Pro, and we scroll down to the audio track mixer, and we find the sequence that we're working on. This brings up the audio mixer showing all the tracks that are currently in use. For this example, all of my primary dialogue is kept on track 1. You can see here from this image of the track mixer, there's already a multiband compressor in slot 1 of the effects. There's the effects window here, which, by the way, if you're not seeing that when you open up your track mixer, there's a little down arrow here that swirls down. Let me click that so this goes back up. That's normally the default, so it's just a little arrow. We'll twirl that down, and it opens up the effects and plugins and some other things that can be added. Each one of these slots are different effects that can be added, things like reverb or delay, and of course in this case compression. All you do is simply click on one of the down arrows and select the type of effect you want to apply. Now you'll notice in this very first slot, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slots available for different effects. There's already a multi-band compressor here in this effect. So I'm going to go to the second effect selection and just show you what you get. None, of course, removes any effect, and there are all these various things that can be added. Amplitude and compression, delay and echo, filter and EQ, which stands for equalization, modulation, noise reduction, reverb, etc. Much of this is done, in some cases, in Adobe Audition, but for the entire dialogue track, the idea is we want to even this out for our final presentation, and each of the clips on our track on a larger piece may have varying volumes throughout the track. So if we select Amplitude and Compression, go over to this drop-down menu here, I like to use multi-band compressor. It just happens to be the one that I'm familiar with and that I use the most. I certainly encourage you to experiment with all the other selections. I encourage you to experiment with the presets and that sort of thing and some of the controls if you're not happy with what you get. But I'll show you, I think, the quickest and simplest way to apply this technique. So I'm going to click on multi-band compressor, double click on the effect in the effects window, and you'll actually get to see the detailed controls for the multi-band compressor. I'll do that now. The way I normally address this is I use the presets. You'll notice here at the top it says presets, and it's already set to a classical master. Classical master is a technique of what's called mastering, which is sort of the final icing on the cake for any music, for dialogue, etc. I'm going to click this open so that you can see some of the other presets that are available, such as broadcast, a de-esser to take those S sounds out of the dialogue. If this were being used for music, there's drums and guitars and hiss reduction, etc. But classical master, I feel, is the most gentle, least intrusive, doesn't make a huge difference, just enough to smooth out the dialogue. The defaults are probably okay. Each one of these sliders is set to a different frequency band. You'll notice when I play the audio, since this is set to +3 dB, the levels for this particular track will go up to just about 3 dB, but not above. At that point, the green bars of the audio signal just start to turn a little bit yellow, but rarely or never go to the red. And so that's the output of this track. But once it goes through the compressor and into your final master channel, which is over here, the master track, which I have the volume turned down for the purpose of this. Normally it's set to 0. The final mix won't go above a level that distorts the signal.
And then I began to recognize, no, actually, I think I should be speaking about these things because we have the capacity within us to shift them.
Notice here on the output gain,
the collective fear that we hold in our human consciousness.
Notice that on the compressor, on the output gain, it never goes above about -6.
We can actually change the probability of the energy patterns that we are running through our lives right now.
And that corresponds to the master level over here, or the master level here.
Darkness of
gets up to about -6, but the compressor keeps it from going any louder than that. So that's how you use compression. Oh, one last thing. Notice the little FX button here on the output gain control. You click on that and a solid line goes through it, and that turns the compressor off. And then you click it again and it turns the compressor on, so that you can do an A-B comparison.
And then I began to recognize, no, actually, I think I should be speaking about these things.
See, with it off,
we have the capacity within it.
Her softer lines get much softer than the rest of the dialogue. And in some cases, the louder lines get louder than the rest of the dialogue. This keeps it very compressed and even.
Us to shift them. If we can clear the fear, the collective fear that we hold in our human consciousness.
And since all of the dialogue for each of the interviews and everyone speaking in the video are all on track 1, at least in most cases, there's a little bit of extra dialogue on track 2 the way that I happen to mix, but only the main dialogue is on track 1. This ensures that each of the people speaking, whoever's voice appears on track 1, will fall within that same dynamic range, and your videos will be much more pleasant to listen to, much more enjoyable, much more listen to, if that's a word. So I hope this helps. Send me an email if you have any questions.